My theme for today says, the people who know their God shall do exploits. The people who know their God shall do exploits. God will do a great work in your life if you put your trust and faith in Him. That is what we're saying. That is what the testimony demonstrates. And that is why I say it is so timely, because the sister already brought the morning's message. I'm only repeating and re-emphasizing what she said. And the song said it too, that if we put our faith in Him, He will bring us through. And so, church, Daniel chapter 11, verse 32. If we'll put that up on the monitor, it says, and such as do wickedly against the covenant shall He corrupt by flatteries. But the portion I want us to concentrate on for a few moments this morning says, but the people that do know their God shall be strong, and they shall do exploits. Amen? Amen, church. Follow me. If you had the opportunity to read chapter 11 of Daniel, Daniel was speaking to the people of Judah, the Jews, his people, God's people. You see, the history of these people, sometimes you have to wonder what kind of people the Jews were and are even today. Even today, as they're embroiled in a war against an enemy that has no face, because you're fighting Hamas, but you're not seeing Hamas. But we're now going into the modern aspect. We're staying in the Old Testament book of Daniel. But I'm saying to you that throughout the history of the Jews, one, from way back from the forefathers, they were taught to worship the true and living God, Jehovah. Just remember that. But even so, they found themselves always going back to worshiping an idol called Baal, a statue called Baal. And over in their history, they found themselves, even you remember when Moses went up for the tablets, when he came back down, he met them in idol worship. I mean, these are people you recall who were in bondage in Egypt. And God sent Moses to rescue them. They knew it was God. And even as they left and they were heading towards the promised land, Pharaoh pursued them. He changed his mind about releasing them, and he sent his armies and chariots to recapture them. And we all know so well that by the time they got to the Red Sea and they felt that they were trapped because there was nowhere to go, the same Jehovah God made a way for them to go. And when Pharaoh and his army came behind, they drowned. We all know that. And so God had demonstrated himself time and time again that he is the true and living God. Yet, they used to worship idols. We recall how even Elijah had to put it to them and say, if God be God, serve him. And even here in this chapter, Daniel found it necessary to say to them that you have to know your God. Church, Christian believers, get it clear today that there will be many distractions. There will be many religions. There will be many falsities. But we need to know our true and living God. We need to have that personal relationship with him. Because he tells us that when we know him, when you know for sure that you know, great and impossible things will come from him to you. It means that we don't depend on ourselves. It means that, yes, we're glad for the doctor, but in spite of and despite of and even without the doctor, you can pray for your healing and God can bring it to pass. He says that if we serve him, things will happen beyond our capabilities. That is what he's saying. Things will happen beyond our capabilities. And so, look at Daniel, church. Look at Daniel. We read Daniel chapter 6. And indeed, God did something miraculous for Daniel. Great exploits. Daniel, we all know, a man of God. The story is very familiar to us. And what Daniel was doing was serving God and serving his country exceptionally well. We're going to say his country because remember they were taken into Babylon, into captivity. But they stayed there and he established. Daniel was doing so well in the country as service that he was placed as second in command. Second in command. The Bible illustrates the structure of the government, that Darius was the king. And the second tier of leadership was the presidents. And below that, you had the princes. And it went on, governors, etc. Daniel was so exceptional in his wisdom and delivery that the only person in the country who had a higher position than Daniel was the king himself. Mark, Daniel wasn't from there, you know. Daniel is not a Babylonian, you know. But he was second in command. One thing with Daniel, you know, no matter the heights he make, he never gave up his God. You know, some of us, there are lots of persons, God is God for them when they're down there, when they're poor, when they ain't got it. And as soon as we start to make it, you can't find them in church. You can't find them praising and worshiping God. But whatever, Daniel did not let his development, his excellence in the country, he didn't let that stand in the way. He progressed, and he just kept serving his God. You would have thought that they would use Daniel as an example of somebody who they should idolize and who they should copy after. But you know what? You know what happened? His own peers. The people who Daniel walked with, the same presidents, princes, and governors, they started to envy Daniel. The people who sat in cabinet with him, the people who sat, as it were, in their house of assembly, the people who sat in their boardroom, the same people across the table from him. This man praising God too much. We got to find a way to cut him down. It wasn't Daniel's enemies, you know. It was his colleagues. No wonder they call them frenemies. Because sometimes the people real close to you, they say something good in front of your face. And church, behind your back, they have the worst things to say about you. But we should not mind that once we keep our eyes fixed on God. And let me tell you something. These people went to the king and they butter him up. And that's what some of us like. We like when people come and say certain things in our ears. We don't check it out. They said, King, we're going to elevate you from king status. We're going to make you a deity. We're going to make you a god. For 30 days, everybody must pray to you. And he liked that. He wanted people to bow down and pray to him and worship him. But it was not because they admired the king. It was not because they thought he was so good. They had what you call ulterior motives. And sometimes even in church, people have ulterior motives. But you know, the Bible tells us Daniel knew about this plot all along. And when it had been confirmed, that is when he went into action. In other words, church, with God on our sides, we need not be fearful. Let's be fearless. But Daniel said, 30 days, 30 years, I know I serve a true and living God, and nothing is going to stop me from lifting him up. And so Daniel get extra brave. Man, if he used to pray in his back room, he opened, the Bible said, he opened all the windows. He opened all the windows. There could be no doubt that he was praying. Sometimes, because you know what it means that Daniel knew his God. He knew whom he believed in. And he was persuaded that he is able to keep him dead or alive. Because him absent from the body means present with the Lord. And so Daniel didn't mind about his life. He said, let me lose my life and find it, Lord, in thee. So it meant dead or alive. He was serving his God. Regardless, he knew that God could do exploits for him as a servant of God.